Everybody. Well, welcome to World of Wildlife. This is our monthly gathering of wildlife people around the world. We've got people here today from Kyoto in Japan. We've got people from Borneo. We've got people from Vancouver. And Matt, our guest speaker today, is in Melbourne at the moment, although he works in North Queensland. So we're all around the world. My name is Dr. Sarah Pai, and I'm your host today, along with Dr. Wong, who's in Borneo. So the way this gathering works is we meet once a month on the 10th of every month. Now the time changes so that all these people from around the world can come, and we've got a lot of people who actually follow us after the event and watch the video in their own time zone when it's appropriate for them. So the way it works is I'll give you a little bit of an update on what I've been doing for the last month, and then I'll pass over to Wong to give us a bit of an update on what's happening in Borneo with bears and other wildlife. He might be telling us something about orangutans, and this month, we never know. And then we'll pass over to Matt Connors, who is our expert from North Queensland, who'll be talking about his area of expertise. So I'm not going to spill the beans on that one just yet. Let me share my screen. Okay, so my update, let's start with that one. I am the author of a number of books, and you'll see a new one on there this month, because Curious Kai Asks Why is actually being launched on the 15th, next Monday. You're all invited, but I'll get to that at the end of today. Most of my books are about Dr. Wong in Borneo, Wildlife Wong series about his adventures with different species in the jungles of Borneo, and Saving Some Bears is his biography, which I wrote as my doctorate. Curious Kai Asks Why, the newest book, actually features our guest speaker today, Matthew Connors, about bugs, and we're going to hear all about those today. I'm very excited to hear what Matthew has to say. It's been a crazy month for me, though. It's been National Science Week in Australia, followed by National Book Week back to back. So for National Science Week, I was in schools 4 days out of 5, spending time with students, teaching them about the environment through my narratives. Went really, really well. I was all over the place there. And then Book Week took place from the 16th to 23rd of August. This is ends up being pretty much a book month in Australia, with librarians and teachers embracing this idea of books. So I spent a lot of time in classrooms, doing probably mostly my one of the workshops where I actually introduce people to the rainforest. They learn how rainforest works, and then they actually get to build a mini rainforest in a jar. So these are some of the jars that the children made during Book Week. After that, directly after that, was the Yamundi Writers Festival, and I was on a panel discussion with Tony Wellington, who's the ex-mayor of Noosa, talking about how the pen can save the world and how we feel writing is important when it comes to science and conservation. I also met some very cool kids there who ran up to me in the middle of the street, and I felt a little bit like a celebrity, so that was kind of fun. After that, Sandra, who's here. Sandra is the illustrator of Curious Kai Asks Why. She and I were part of Romancing the Stars, which is an event on the Sunshine Coast where librarians and teachers get to meet local authors, and we get to basically pitch to them about our books and workshops and things like that in a speed dating sort of a format. So that was a bit of a fun thing to do. And then I did another workshop doing Rainforest in a Jar in Glasshouse Christian College last week, where my puppet Pongo came along and helped kids understand a little bit more about the rainforest. So that's pretty much what's been going on for my month. I'm hoping to have a slightly slower month, but I don't think it's likely to happen, because the online launch of Curious Kai will happen next Monday. The way this works is, if you guys register, I'm going to share the registration link. If you register on Monday morning, you'll be sent a link to a YouTube video, and in that YouTube video, it's about a 45-minute launch video, and I'm introducing the book. I'm interviewing Sandra, the illustrator, and I'm interviewing all the scientists. There's 11 different scientists that Curious Kai actually meets in this narrative, where she's traveling around Queensland, having her crazy questions about wildlife answered. So the scientists are real, even though Curious Kai is not. And you'll get to meet them if you come to the launch. Now, because it's a video, you'll get the ability to watch this launch anytime during that entire week, which means it doesn't matter what time zone you're in. So please register. Be lovely to have you as part of that launch.
Yes, I'm ready.
So I'd
Oh,
love to
you got a
introduce
lovely picture of me
Matthew
there.
Connors from James Cook University, who's going to talk to us about some incredible bugs. I spent time with Matt when I was researching Curious Kai Asks Why. We spent time in the dark looking for incredible creatures, and I also got to see some of the amazing creatures that he finds in the daylight as well. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what Matt has to say. And for Curious Kai Asks Why, we've actually got a launch happening, an in-person launch happening in Cairns Library, close to where Matt lives. So we're hoping that he's going to be able to bring along a couple of incredible species to that to share with us. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing and introduce Matt. Thank you, Matt, for being here.
Hi, everyone. I was going to say good morning, but it seems like it's not quite morning for everyone. As Sarah's already said, I live and work up in Cairns in North Queensland, but at the moment I'm actually down in Melbourne for the week. So I'm just going to pretend that I'm still in Cairns where it's a bit warmer. And most of my examples will be from Australia because I know Australian species very well, but the general ideas of what I'm saying apply to most areas of the world. So, I want you all to think back to when people first started traveling around the globe, exploring new places and discovering species that had never been seen before. And not just when Westerners were doing that, I want you to think back to the millennia ago when humans first left Africa to colonize the world. Can you imagine the very first people to ever see a kangaroo or a wallaby tens of thousands of years ago? These days, I guess it's kind of disappointing in a way that we seem to know what everything is already. You can't go to some remote place and see some amazing big mammal that's never been seen before. And there are still new species being discovered, but surely that's pretty difficult, right? Do you think you could go and find one? Do you reckon you could be the one? Well, what if I told you just go outside right now and go find a new species? That's pretty easy, right? You'd be 2 or 3 minutes? Not quite. But here's something easier for you. When do you think the most recent completely new bird species was discovered? It's this one if you're wondering, the Inti tanager. What do you guys reckon? Any ideas when it was
I don't know, 5 years
first
ago?
discovered? 5 years ago? Well, it was first spotted in the remote forests of South America way back in 1993.
Oh,
But it was only formally named in 2021. So it's
wow.
quite difficult to find a new bird. But what about other types of organism? Well, you might have some more luck with them. There are still quite a few different frogs and reptiles and plants and fish and things being discovered every year. For example, here in Australia, 8 different species of leaf-tailed gecko have been discovered since the year 2000. Not quite this one. This is a common species that isn't one of the new ones, but we do have plenty of new ones still being discovered. And here are a couple of different species of organisms that were found in just the past few years across Australia. So the silver-spotted weedfish up there is known from just 2 individuals collected from below 50 meters in the remote waters off southern Australia. The Pinnacle's leaf-tail gecko there, which doesn't really have a leaf tail, is known from a small and difficult to reach rocky outcrop in North Queensland, and you get the picture here. These are all pretty much from very remote and difficult to reach places, right? But what if I told you that there were hundreds of new species of animals living all around us right now? Well, behold, bugs. Or if you want to get technical, invertebrates. So we all know that there are a lot of bugs, but I don't think you quite realize just how many bugs there actually are. There are so many bugs. So many. It's hard to fathom just exactly how many bugs there are. Let's go back to the example of birds, okay? How many bird species are there in Australia? So, looking at my slide, it's at least 6, right?
Yeah, at least 6.
But it depends a bit on whether you want to include introduced species and things like accidental vagrants and all that, but it's about 900 species. So about 150 of these slides, and that's all the birds in Australia.
Wow.
Now, that's a really huge number, especially if you're a birder, right? So for those of you who don't know anything about bird watching, birders have these lists that they like to tick off and they like to brag about their lists, and I should know because I'm a bit of a birder myself. So, if something interesting, oh, have you seen the vagrant Oriental honey buzzard. Oh, you haven't? Well, better go find it. It's a bit like that in the world of birding. Anyway, the very top birders of Australia who have spent decades chasing rare species for their lists have about 800 bird species ticked off for Australia, and that takes them years and years to see that many. But I'm getting sidetracked here. Where were we? Okay, yes, there are 900 bird species in Australia, give or take, which is a lot. But that's just peanuts compared to the number of bugs. Just here in Australia, there are an estimated 22,000 species of moths. That's just moths. So from our enormous Hercules moth down to some of our tiniest little brown things, there are 24 times as many species of moths as there are birds in Australia. It's hard to even think about so many different moths. And let me reiterate to you, that's just moths. There are so many other types of bugs. We're talking about other insects like beetles, flies, grasshoppers, dragonflies, and ants, as well as things like spiders, scorpions, centipedes, and crabs. And then all the way out to those other groups of invertebrates that you maybe didn't even consider. Snails, worms, jellyfish, octopuses. I'm primarily a terrestrial biologist, so I'm going to focus more on the terrestrial invertebrates, really just what you think of when someone says bugs. But remember that there are hundreds of thousands of species all through our oceans as well that still need names. So, factoring in all of the bugs in Australia, it's estimated that firstly, we have a couple of hundred species all up. Oh, sorry, a couple of 100,000 species all up. And secondly, less than a third of our species have actually been discovered and named. And it's a really similar situation in all different parts of the world, especially in the tropics. So how can this be? Well, it's not too surprising when you consider how many bugs there are. But still, we've got a lot of work to do. And I'll tell you a bit more about what that work actually involves a bit later. But for now, I just want to introduce you to two words, okay? The first one is undescribed, and the second one is taxonomy. What do they mean? No, you're thinking of taxidermy. Well, for a species to get a scientific name, it's actually quite a lot of work. You can't just slap a name on it and call it a day. You have to be very detailed and make sure that it really is a new species. So you essentially have to describe it to the rest of the scientific community, and only then can you give the species a name. This process of discovering and describing new species is called taxonomy, and the scientists who do it are called taxonomists. So for example, the taxonomist Carl Linnaeus described us humans back in 1758, and he gave us the scientific name Homo sapiens. Now, it's not Homo sapien, it's always sapiens. So if anyone tries to say Homo sapiens, I expect you to tell them off. No. So if a species hasn't yet been described and named, we say that it's an undescribed species. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we don't know anything about this species. It's just that nobody has described them yet, and so it's still an undescribed species. Some of these species have been known about for decades. And this fly is a great example. It's called McAlpine's fly. Now, scientists had known about this fly since the 1970s, but it was only recently named in 2017. And it's now known as Ullerumaya McAlpini, but before 2017 it was just undescribed. Why did it take it so long to give it a name? Well, I'll go into more detail on that later, but for now, just know that when I say an undescribed species, I just mean a species that hasn't been formally named and described yet. So, back to the topic at hand, 2/3 of Australia's invertebrates haven't been described yet. And who knows how many species around the world are yet to be named. Here in Australia, though, that means that there are thousands and thousands and thousands of new species all around the country. And in fact, unless it has a species name written with it, every single invertebrate photograph that you see up in my slides is an undescribed species. So that includes all these ones that we've already seen, like these, and these, and these ones. So where should you go to find all of these new species? Well, some places are hotspots for new species. Sometimes it's because they're isolated patches of interesting habitat. Sometimes it's because they're an area of really high biodiversity. And sometimes it's just because nobody has bothered to look very much. So here's 4 of my favorite local spots for finding undescribed species. Well, relatively local. They're more local to me than to you guys. So down south here, we've got White Mountains, a nice area of dry forest interspersed with heath and vine thickets where I found this lovely new ghost moth. Up further, we have the amazing limestone caves and outcrops of Chillago, which is featured in Curious Kai Asks Why, where there are probably hundreds of little short-range endemic species, including this nice millipede. Out towards the coast and into the rainforest is Mount Lewis, an isolated peak with beautiful cloud forests at the top and lots of weird species that are probably found nowhere else, including this slender green huntsman that doesn't really look like much like a huntsman if you are not familiar with the group. And then way up north here, we've got Kutini-Payamu National Park, also known as Iron Range, where weird and wonderful species from both Australia and New Guinea intermix with each other, including this interesting new tortoise beetle. Now let's take a closer look at Mount Lewis for a moment, because there are a lot of new species here. And in a lot of these places, there are so many new species. So just considering undescribed species that I personally have found on Mount Lewis, we've got this huntsman, we've got a cockroach, if it's going to load there. There we go. A semi-slug, a short-tailed whip scorpion, another huntsman, a raspberry cricket, a fishing spider, a king cricket, another cockroach, a pygmy grasshopper, another huntsman, another what am I looking at? Another raspberry cricket. Sorry, a millipede, a cockroach, a pygmy grasshopper, another huntsman, and another raspberry cricket. There we go. Got all the names. Okay. So yeah, so all of these species are found on Mount Lewis, and so far we haven't found them anywhere else. And the question is, are they really endemic to this one mountaintop, or are we just not looking hard enough? In short, nobody really knows. So some places certainly have heaps of new species. But yeah, these places that I've mentioned are maybe a bit more difficult to get to than most. They're not exactly right in the suburbs. But there are just so many bugs that there are new species everywhere, and I really do mean everywhere. So these four amazing bugs right here are from right where I live in the rainforest between Cairns and Kuranda. They're all undescribed and they're all from less than 10 kilometers from where I live, my house. And in fact, I wasn't joking when I said it would take most of you 2 or 3 minutes to find a new species if you stepped outside. It depends a little on where you live, but for most of us, there are new species living right on our doorstep. This katydid here is one of my favorite examples because it's so common. It lives all through North Queensland, and in Cairns it's so common that it's on almost every second street. It's completely undescribed and it doesn't even have a genus name, which is the level above species. In fact, there are a bunch of katydids all through this region that don't have names, and I should know because katydids are one of my study groups. So there's a problem here though. If you did find this katydid, how would you even know that it's a new species? It just looks like every other little green katydid, and a number of you probably didn't even know what a katydid was until this picture showed up. So how on earth are you supposed to know what's a new species and what's not? Well, it's really difficult, and that there is where the real problem lies. Have a look at these two katydids. Do you know which one is undescribed? Can you even tell the difference between them? Well,
No.
this one is undescribed, and this one is Sedecia gubita. There certainly are some differences between the two. For example, the one on the left there has a bit of a red stripe on the underside of its leg, and it's a bit bulkier, but that doesn't tell you anything about whether it's named or not. And what about these two? They're even more similar. So this one is Sedecia gloriosa on the left, and the one on the right is undescribed. The only real difference between them is the shape of the cerci, a pair of appendages at the end of the male's abdomen. These appendages are used by the male to help grasp the female during mating, so you can imagine that they might be important for distinguishing between species. Okay, back to the question at hand then. How are you supposed to know what's a new species and what not a new species? The only reason I know so much about katydids is because they're one of the groups that I study. So when I see a katydid, I can pretty much tell you right away what it is. But if you were to put a crane fly like this one in front of me and ask me what species it was, I'd have no hope. It takes years to wrap your head around even a small group of invertebrates, and by necessity, there are other groups that you just won't be able to study. So instead, I'd send this off to my cranefly taxonomist, who actually lives here in Melbourne, and he'd tell me what it is. And he'd say, oh, it's Leptotarsus ducalis. So, sadly, there aren't many taxonomists these days, but that means that we do all kind of know each other. And that's really helpful because you start to absorb some of their knowledge. But obviously, we do need more taxonomists. And you might have noticed before that I have quite a few different pictures of undescribed huntsman spiders. And that's because some of my closest friends work on huntsmen. So this is my good friend Caitlin Henderson's, who Sarah did meet when she came up to visit. And that also means that when I see a huntsman, I have a fairly good idea of whether it's new or not, right? So you've got these three, these are all new, but then you've also got these ones and these ones. And all of these, and there are a lot of new huntsmen all around Australia and probably all around the world as well. But you guys don't have a huntsman expert who you can just send a photo to if you want identification. And if you see a nice katydid, like these ones, you can't just take a photo of it and send it to me, right? But wait, why not? Why can't you just send me photos of cool katydids?
Yeah.
Yeah, after all, I like seeing katydid photos and you want to know what your katydid is. But I think that you would clog up my inbox if you all emailed me a photo of every katydid that you saw. But fear not, there is a solution here. It's a wonderful little thing called citizen science. Now, there are lots and lots of different citizen science programs, and you've probably heard about at least a couple of them. I want to talk to you about these two, iNaturalist and Questagame. They're pretty similar. I would say Questagame's geared a bit more towards kids, but they're both fantastic. So for most of my talk, I'm going to focus on iNaturalist, or iNat for short, because that's the one that I use, but Questagame works more or less the same way. So how do they work? Well, if you see a cool bug, you go outside, you take a photo of it, and then you upload it to the site. Simple as that. And of course, it doesn't have to be a photo of a bug. It can be a bird, a fish, a flower, a mushroom, pretty much any living thing. If you've got a good microscope, you could even upload bacteria photos. So once a photo's been uploaded, then it's in the system, and everyone else who uses the site can see it. And that includes thousands of scientists like me. So if you upload a photo of a cool katydid, I'll see it and I can tell you what it is. But it's so much more than just that. Not only do you get to know what bug you photographed, but your picture becomes a data point that scientists can use for all sorts of different research. So let's have a look at some examples. What's the distribution of the koala? Well, here you go. Thanks, INAT. And by the way, did you realize there's an introduced population of koalas over in Perth? I only found that out when I was preparing for this talk.
No,
Now,
didn't know
yeah,
that.
now you could probably find a map similar to this elsewhere online. Koalas are well known and it wouldn't be too difficult to find a good map. But what's the distribution of the snail Xanthomelon sagginatum? That's not something you can just Google. But look, there you go. That's its distribution. What's the
Wow.
distribution of the magnificent cross spider? There it is. That's where everyone's seen it.
That's so cool.
What about the tropical rockmaster? There you go. What about the squash bug Turnistria bispina? Again, there you go. Easy. Now, this sort of stuff is possible because there's so much data on INAT, and it's growing exponentially. There are currently almost 12 million observations on INAT just here in Australia alone, and there are almost 300 million across the world. And that is double the number that was there back in 2022. So it's growing at an incredible rate. 15% of the observations in Australia are just from this year, and it's about the same across the world. So it's a huge data source for all sorts of scientists to use. And if you take a dive into these millions of sightings, you can find some really cool stuff. The distribution of species is a core part of INAT, but there are a lot of other things that you can record. You can see the times of year when a species is most observed and even the times when different life stages are around. You can also record behaviors and interactions between species. So here's a really cool record of a Papuan frogmouth going for a swim. It's the first time that's been recorded. And here's the first record of a badge huntsman preying on a Tommy Roundhead dragon, which is pretty cool. Now, one of the most important parts of INAT, and one that's been probably the most useful so far, is the detection of invasive species, especially in areas where they've never been seen before. Back in 2020, the highly invasive Asian shore crab was detected in Melbourne for the first time, and we only found out about it through INAT. Without citizen science, it could easily have been months or even years before the species was detected. Now, my own research has also focused partly on this aspect of citizen science. A couple of years ago, I published a study on the distribution of the South African mantis in Australia, another introduced species that we only know about through citizen science. Now, luckily for us, it doesn't seem to be having a bad impact on our native species, but we can still use INAT to see how quickly it's spreading and get a good idea of where it might end up. One of the coolest parts of INAT, though, in my opinion, is that there are thousands and thousands of records of species that have never been photographed before, and plenty that have never even been seen before. These 4 amazing bugs are all completely new and they were all discovered through INAT. So citizen science is a great way to find new species. Or rather, it's a great way to work out whether or not you have found a new species. And in fact, 2 of these actually have names now. That pale silverfish in the top right is now called Subtrinomura epigea, And that mantis in the bottom left is one that I was lucky enough to name myself in 2023. And I actually named it in honor of iNaturalist. It's called Inimia nat, or iNat for short. So let's go back to that question that I touched on before. Why are there so many undescribed species? And why does it take so long to describe a species? Well, the short of it is that it's hard work, and there isn't much funding for taxonomy these days, so there aren't many taxonomists around these days. So it really can take a very long time to get a new species a name, even if it's something big and charismatic, like this lovely tarantula, for example. Hopefully you all think tarantula is a charismatic animal.
Yeah.
Look how cute and fluffy it is, surely. Anyway, let me show you some of this exciting taxonomic work that I have been talking about. Now, you know that I like katydids, but most of my work to date has actually been with praying mantises, and mostly very small praying mantises like this little moss mantis. And when I said before that you have to describe a species in detail, how detailed were you imagining? Because this is the level of detail that goes into just one species description. That's an incredible amount of detail for just one little mantis. So that description was just for one species. Have a look at these two mantises here. These are called paperbark mantises. And you already know what I'm going to ask, so I'll just skip to the answer, right? This one is called Imifusca, and this one was undescribed when I first found it, at least. And now it does have a name. I called it Imicarimbia. So, yeah. So, what's the difference between the two of them? Well, that's where we run into a problem, because the difference is nothing. There is no difference, at least not externally. So why are they different species then? Well, the key difference is not, so there's differences in behavior, for example, in habitat and in genetics. But importantly, these two mantises are both female, and there is a difference between the males of these species. What is the difference? Well, it's in their genitalia. That may sound odd, but most insects have really species-specific genitalia. So of course, I spend a lot of time looking at insect genitalia. So, how does one inspect the genitalia of a tiny mantis? Well, you have to use microscalpels and potassium hydroxide. Now, insect genitalia are very different to vertebrate genitalia. For one thing, they are tiny. That's how big they are there, right next to my finger. And if we take a closer look, we'll see that they're covered in lobes and spines and all sorts of things, and they're not even symmetrical. So here are the genitalia of those two paperbark mantises that I showed you before. Can you see the difference between them?
Yes.
It's the key difference is this structure here. So that you can see probably some other differences, but that's the only consistent difference between these two species. And we can see that in the one on the left there, it's kind of pale and it's more or less straight on that right edge there. And on the left, it's much darker and very strongly curved. So that's the only difference that we humans can see between these species. Obviously, the mantises can tell themselves apart much more easily than we can, but that gives you a good idea of why it can be so difficult to tell species apart in some cases.
Matt,
So, yes.
how many animals would you have to look at to know that that's not just an individual difference?
Yeah, so I probably looked at around 50 dissected genitalia from these species in total.
Wow.
So yeah, and I was lucky enough to get some funding for genetic sequencing, and we sequenced about 15 of these. Yeah, so that was exciting. Yeah, so given that we have so many species left to discover, and that so much work goes into describing new species, you'd think there'd be an army of scientists working hard to name them all. But as I said before, there just aren't many taxonomists around these days. Well, for one thing, so yeah, why aren't there more taxonomists? Well, for one thing, taxonomy is difficult. There are a lot of rules to follow. It's about as close as a biologist can be to being a lawyer. But more importantly, there's not much funding for taxonomy anymore. All of our science funding goes towards ecology, behavioral studies, and conservation. And don't get me wrong, those things are really important. We need conservation more than ever, given the current state of the world. But taxonomy forms the basis for all of these other studies, and it's a simple fact that here in Australia at least, a species cannot be protected under federal law unless it has a name. An example of that for you, this little matchstick grasshopper from southeastern Australia is threatened by severe habitat loss. So I'm currently working with researchers at the University of Melbourne to describe it so that it can be legally protected. But even more important than the legal aspect, how on earth are we supposed to protect something if we don't even know that it exists, right? This is one of the biggest issues that our world is facing, and many people don't even know that the problem exists. So, how can you help? Well, you could always become a taxonomist, but that's definitely not for everyone. It's very much a job for those passionate rather than those seeking an easy or a job that will make them rich. Um, so it's a lot of fun. I do enjoy it, yes, but it's definitely not for everyone. And I've already told you exactly how you can help, though. Citizen science, right? Every photo that you upload is useful, whether it's something rare or something common. It doesn't matter whether you trek to some remote mountaintop to find a rare bird or if you've just photographed a cool snail in your backyard, because it all feeds into the huge pool of data that we can use. And who knows, maybe you will find a completely new species. That's exactly how we got a name for our lovely mantis here, Inemia nat. Without citizen science, we may not even know that it exists. So, what are you waiting for? Get out there and start discovering things. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, you make me want to go outside right now.
Yeah, oh,
It is.
I always want to be outside.
Because I'm hoping everyone else agrees. So we're going to be out there with iNaturalist. I was unaware that you could actually look at the distribution on iNaturalist. So that's the next thing
Yeah.
I'm going to be looking at. That's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's amazing resource. And of course, you'll get on there and sometimes you'll say, oh, this is clearly misidentified, but anyone can correct them, which is really great.
yeah, I really appreciate that because when I upload things, I don't have much of a clue on what I'm looking at, and I sort of choose something that's
Mm,
close and hope that a scientist will pitch in and help.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
That was marvelous. Thank you, Matt.
Thank
If you
you.
could
I'm glad you all
please stop
enjoyed.
sharing your screen and then we'll open up
Yes.
to questions. I'd like to start with one while everyone's thinking of their own questions. I'd like
Yeah,
to start by
sure.
asking you whether iNaturalist has integrated AI now.
Yeah, so for a while now, it's had this thing called computer vision,
Yeah,
and a lot of people will have heard of an app called Seek, which is also run by iNaturalist, where they've used a lot of the photographs that have been uploaded to train a model to help identify things from photos, and it's quite accurate. It's still got some inaccuracies, but it's much more accurate than say Google's photo identifier when it comes to
yeah.
animals and plants and things. So
I was imagining with the amount of uploads you said have been happening recently,
yeah.
you can't imagine that scientists would even have time to check all those.
Well, you'd be surprised, but we are, one of the things that's coming to light in the past year or so is that we are struggling a bit with a lack of identifiers because so many people are putting their data up on here. And I mean, that's still a pretty good problem to have,
It is.
given that we have all these data points. But yeah, the computer vision, the AI that's integrated is fairly helpful for some things. So for example, if I were to go outside and take a photo of a bird, birds are pretty common, people photograph birds, it's probably going to get it right the vast majority of the time. But if I photograph a little bug that's not very common, it's probably going to have more difficulty. But it's quite good in that if it's not confident, it'll suggest a higher level. So if I photograph a little brown moth and it has no
Yeah,
idea which species it is, it might just tell me that it's a moth.
yeah, yeah. That's great. Who else has questions for Matt?
Well, I have a question, Matt. I'm curious to know what is your favorite insect of all time?
Oh, that's a good question. Uh, I think realistically, I do like all insects, but I have a couple of favorites. I very much like insects that look like plants, which you may have noticed from the moss mantis and the katydids. I think my favorite is a species found in northern Australia called the rainbow mantis. And the females are this nice bright green color with some orange edging, and they blend in really well with the nice gum trees. But if you disturb them, they'll raise up their wings, they'll flare out everything, and they have this beautiful rainbow pattern on the inside of the wings. They got bright red lipstick, like they've just murdered someone. No,
They're
they're
pretty
beautiful
awesome, those ones, I
mantises.
have to say.
Yeah.
Good question, Em. Wow. There's so many things that you said that I'm going to have to watch back that video again and again.
Yeah.
There's so much to absorb, and just this idea. I was in school last week and mentioning you and saying that you named a couple of species, and the kids in year 3 or 4 were just gobsmacked. They just had no idea that there's a possibility that people could still be naming species, you know.
Yeah.
to now I'll be able to go in and say that you might actually be able to do it, that it's not that.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I think we might get a few new naturalists and entomologists in the next generation if I keep going at that.
Yes,
Yes.
please. That's what we need.
All
I
right.
think I think a lot of people don't realize just how many new species there are. So, like, we're up to almost 2 million named species, but the
Wow.
estimate for the total number of species across the world is anywhere between 5 and 30 million. So we're not even halfway there at the very minimum estimate.
Wow, that's incredible, isn't it? Especially when we're talking about insects or all species going extinct.
Yeah,
we sort of guess how many are going extinct, but those are only the ones that we actually know the name of, right? So we're not actually
yeah,
thinking about the
exactly.
others.
So many species will have gone extinct before we even know about them.
Mm. So I have one more question since no one else is coming up with any just yet. Is this concept of species? Yeah. So
Yeah,
my basic understanding of species is that a species is something that can't mate with another species. Yeah, that's sort of the basic sort of textbook um, school answer of what a species is. But is this so when it comes to invertebrates?
yeah. So the species concept is a very difficult one because there's all sorts of different ways to define a species and all sorts of different problems that you come across. So, for example, just with that interbreeding thing, we know that horses and donkeys can interbreed to produce a mule, and even though mules can't have their own offspring, it's still an animal.
Mm.
And then there are other sorts. So some of the species that we get around, there's a local stick insect that's suspected to be a hybrid species. So it came about by hybridization with two other species.
Well,
And
that evolution is happening as we speak.
yeah. It's very
When
much more
Wong comes on,
complicated
he might
than
tell us a bit about the macaques, which are doing the same thing in Borneo, which is kind of interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, might be an
Oh,
interesting
that
segue,
would
but
be interesting. I'll
yeah,
give one more example though, if that's
yeah, please do.
so with the matchstick grasshoppers that I was talking about, there are a species over in Western Australia which is entirely female, and they reproduce by cloning themselves.
Ah,
So how are we supposed to define species there? None of them mate with each other. So
that
yeah,
doesn't work.
our species description, at least the traditional one, entirely breaks down there, and we have to come across.
It does. I
We have to
hadn't
get
thought of that
new.
because I know there's a few geckos that do the
Yeah,
same. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, we've got to rethink what a species is, don't we? That's
mm,
probably step one.
yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. Oh, well, thank you so much, Matt. Major round of applause. That was
Thank you,
fabulous.
and thanks for having me. I hope you all
Thank you.
enjoyed the talk and learned a bit about some bugs.
Absolutely, more than I even imagined. So thank you so much. That was really good. All right, so now I'm going to pass over to Dr. Wong Siew Tee, founder and director of the Borneo and Sun Bear Conservation Centre. And we might pass over with two little segues here, Wong. One of them is perhaps you could start by telling us a little bit about the macaques and their interbreeding. And also, just wondering if you can tell us about an insect that's named after you.
Oh yeah, sure. Okay, so good to see everybody. And talking about speciations, talking about naming a new species, this is definitely a very interesting sessions that we share by Matt. So good job. For your information, I actually have a stick insect named after me. It's really amazing. It is a stick insect that was described in Sabah by a friend of mine. Francis, yeah, he's a uh, medical doctor, but his hobby is on stick insect. And then he's from Singapore, uh, and then he every time he come to Borneo, he go to the forest, he go to the West Malaysia, he go to Sumatra, and then looking for a stick insect. And he's a true self-trained naturalist, and he described a bunch of species. And it happens to be that every times when he go to the forest, he will describe many stick insect species. And I'm very honored that one of them is called Plasmosocidium CUTI. Let me show you how it looks like. 1 minute.
This is pretty cool. Matt, that one day we need a curious kite. insect, please?
I could make that happen.
That'd be brilliant.
Yeah, so this is called the so on this book, so like what Matt just described, there's a description for this book. The name is Plasmodium cti, and the pictures of the stick insect looks like this.
Wow, there we
Well, it
go.
just looks like a stick insect, and then only expert can be able to tell them apart. Yeah, and of course with my picture on it. So that's my stick insect for sure. Okay. Yeah.
Love it. Well done.
And
And the
then a
other
lot
thing
of
we
people.
were talking about was the macaques. Wong.
Yeah, sure. So here in the at this Sepilo here at the Bonin Sampai Conservation Center and the Orangutan Rehabilitation Center, we are next to each other. And then the local in Borneo, there are two different species of macaque, which is the long-tail macaque and the pigtail macaque. And then in the wild, both of these macaque, they have, although they are macaque, but they have different niche, meaning that they have different requirements in terms of habitat and so on. But here at the Orangutan Center, because of the constant feeding of the orangutans at the Orangutan Center, and after the Buddhism Conservation Center established, we also feed our bears in the forest enclosures, and then these two species of macaques mixed together. And then because it is a good environment, good life, because that is, food is literally satisfaction guaranteed. And just like when you go to a all you can eat buffet restaurant, it is situation is just exactly like that. So when food is abundant, satisfaction guarantee, and life is good for them. And then when life is good for them, they mix around and they breed with each other. Okay. And then we also see that the hybrid is actually fertile. It's not like mule. It's not like horses and donkey, and then you have the mule, and the mule is sterile. But these hybrids are fertile. They can produce baby, and the babies can produce babies again. So this is something that is quite interesting for taxonomists or primatologists to look at. And at first, I thought it is just a unique situations that happen here in Sepilo. However, 2 years ago when we were rescuing Wawa from an oil palm plantation next to the Tabin Wildlife Reserve where we release Wawa, one of our bears. And then that plantation also have this hybrid macaque. I was very surprised, and after that I know exactly why, because the oil palm plantations also facilitate food. They also have additional food, which is the oil palm seed for the macaque to eat. And then so those macaque that live adjacent to an oil palm plantations, just a matter of time they will learn that, hey, the oil palm plantations produce a lot of oil palm seed, and which is good food for them. And then they decide to stay, they decide to hang around, and then they decide to mate. So that's what we are seeing. And there's even more interesting case. The macaque, at least, the pigtail macaque is called Macaca nimastrina, and then the long-tail macaque is called Macaca fascicularis. At least they have the same genus. And there was another very interesting cases here in Sabah where a proboscis monkey, big nose monkey, is seen mating with a silver leaf monkey several years ago. And it was at Kinabatangan. And then because Kinabatangan was highly visited by visitors and researchers, and then this phenomenon was actually documented by my friends, a professor from Taiwan. And then a big male proboscis monkey actually mated with a female silverleaf monkey. And then because that area has been frequently visited by tourists, tour guide, and that particular individual was seen giving birth to a very weird looking babies. And then right now this baby become an adult and she's having her own babies.
Oh,
So
neat.
yes, and then there was a scientific
I
paper
actually saw
published.
those when I was on Kinabatangan. It was really exciting to see them.
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's very weird. And then there was actually a very long, like 12 pages scientific paper discuss about these hybridizations And I think, what happened is that when humans alter the landscape by destroying rainforests and stuff like that, and then at the same time, our activity also facilitate a new species being in creation. So
Mm,
whether it is good or not is on somebody's judgment.
yeah.
So as life is amazing, life trying to survive, speciations, animal try their best to survive through natural selections, and then with the landscape that we change over the years, and things are trying to survive, just like the polar bear and the brown bear hybridizations,
Yeah, it
because
is,
of global
isn't it?
warming and things like that. So in the near
Still
future, we
going
definitely will see, yeah, more and
on.
more this kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well done. So Wong, this kid, tell us what's going on with you. Now, I noticed on your social medias that you had a few interactions with orangutans recently.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, orangutans always come here. I mean, every day. It's just that, well, they are there, and then I take a great picture of them. I said, oh, I
Yeah.
might show them as well. You know.
And what's happening
So
with your bears?
yeah, so around, well, okay, so for your information, we are next to the orangutan center, and then this center is literally run by the orangutan after 5 p.m. After all the staff leave, the orangutan take over. Sometimes if I leave slightly later, and then have many encounters. And then in terms of our centers, for myself, I've been doing a little bit of traveling lately to Taiwan for about 2 weeks or so, attending conference and giving talks, which is a good thing to go to Taiwan, and as well as visiting family. My kids and my wife live in Taiwan, and then in terms of the center, I think the biggest changes is that we are, as we speak, we are working on the entrance foyer. Our entrance will be very different the next time you visit, okay? Because it will be enlarged, and this is the black and white pictures of this. Yeah, so it is going to be a more friendly, more welcoming, more obvious entrance, because over the years we have a lot of comment from visitors that do not know that we exist, because our entrance is on such a very narrow boardwalk. So with this expansion, we hope we can be seen by everybody that visited the orangutan, the world famous orangutan rehabilitation center.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so the constructions is scheduled to be done on November, in another 2 months' time, and then me and Wenbing here today. Maybe
No,
not.
he's not. I don't know where he is.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, so maybe he's teaching. Yeah. Yeah, and are working on several great signboards, and I'm very looking forward to have that signboard printed out and installed, because the two and other signboards that we have been working with on, I mean, we have a lot of positive comment from so many visitors. Yeah.
Signs are amazing, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah. And then in terms of the bears, we have expanded our Pen B and Pen C and Pen D. So visitors have great views of the bears, especially Romolina climbing trees, that just next to the boardwalk. And it was really amazing to see they use this tree, and then show the natural behaviors. And all of the visitors that visited here are all very happy about seeing this. So that's why I'm saying, we're trying to use our rescued bear as the ambassador for the species, and then to educate the public about how amazing a sun bear is, and also how amazing the rainforest is, and that is a very good learning experience, as well as bringing the tourists to this part of the world, and then the tourist money will create jobs for the local people, will improve local people's livelihood, to a point where the local people can choose not to hunt, can
Yeah.
choose to protect the forest, can choose to protect the wildlife, and then as well as the authority, the government see the potential revenues that generated from nature-based tourisms, and therefore it is good for everybody. And Wenbing and I have been working on a signboard called 5 win for the local people, win for the politician, win for the conservationists like me, and then win for and then eventually win for nature, win for wildlife, you know. So
Yeah.
that's the model we should go into. Yeah. And then the rest of the bears over here are good. I will post more videos of, you know, like yesterday, Fulong was up on a tree, oh, so high. If you see my Instagram or my Facebook, I just posted late last night, and then I'm have another few more story of Romelina climbing trees, making nests in front of everybody, and all of these was so difficult to see in the wild. Yeah, so here it is possible to see. And I'm heading to Tabin, to Ladatu this afternoon. And then tomorrow I'm visiting Tinam and Pitang. Hopefully I can bring more story to all of you. Lately, they have been in the cages most of the time because of the elephants. You know, the big herd of elephants is around the camp, so it's not safe for the team to walk them in the forest. And then both Pitang and Tinoms are mixed together, good friends now. They are both of them going good. And then both of them, I cannot let them. It's very scary every time I go and see them. I have to be hiding far away because they can sense. They once they smells me, they just dash towards my directions, and I can read sunbears. Yeah, body language, right? And I know that they are not happy to see me. So, and then with their size right now, I think Tinam is 28 kilograms. Although it's small, but it looks like a size of a Rottweiler, and they can do a lot of damage with the claws and the canine. And then Pitang, the same thing. Pitang is almost is more than 20 kilograms now. So they both of them are doing are growing big. Yeah, so cannot wait to tell you more about how they do. Yeah.
Fantastic. I'll get an update on them next month, I hope.
Yeah,
Thank
sure,
you, Wong.
sure.
That's a marvelous update. Meeting. I've learned so much. It's been incredible. Thank you so much, Matt and Wong. We've had some really interesting discussions there. I'd like to remind you guys that the launch for Curious Kai Asks Why will drop onto YouTube on Monday morning. So please, the registration link is in the chat. And for those of you that are watching on a catch up, we'll put it in the email that we send you afterwards. So you'll be able to sign up for that. It'll be great to have you there. Don't forget though, also subscribe to any of my channels and socials, then you'll find out, you won't miss anything that way, which will be really good. Next month, you get me as your guest speaker because we're actually going to talk about my recent trip to the Galapagos Islands. So I want to introduce you to some of the species in the Galapagos, and I also want to discuss with you some of the ways that the Galapagos or the Ecuadorian government is actually putting nature first. So let's have a bit of a chat through that and see if we can take some of the ways that they're doing it and expand them throughout the world. So let's have a bit of a chat through that next month. I'll see you on the 10th of October. That's October, yeah. See, the 10th of October. I'll let you know the time via email and socials. All right, well, we'll see you next month. Thank you once again, Matt, for an incredible talk, and thank you everybody for being here. You're now part of this family, so I hope you come every month.
Haha.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yes.